We are a team of like-minded individuals. We have come together to bring athletes what they have wanted for years. From fast-acting carbs to everyday electrolytes. Products that are built on science and backed by common sense. Get after life by fueling your good life. FuelYourGoodLife.com.
Welcome to the Slowtwitch Podcast. My name's Kevin Mackinnon. I'm a senior editor at Slowtwitch. I'm here with Slowtwitch's Ben Snyder McGrath and a very special guest. He's a three-time Olympian, a Canadian champion, I don't know how many times over, and Ironman 70.3 winner, Tyler Mislawchuk. Tyler, thanks so much for joining us. And I've always wanted to ask, is that how I pronounce your last name? Or is it
pretty
supposed
close.
to be Mislawchuk?
Pretty close. That's what everyone says online. It's Mislawchuk, so it's a Ukrainian name. But I've heard every name in the book growing up playing hockey. So they used to sometimes just call me Miss because they didn't want to pronounce the whole thing. So
okay, so Mislawchuk. I will do my best to get that. I'm sure I'll be announcing your name at some point again soon, or at some point in the future. So hope so anyway.
Yeah.
Tyler, obviously a Canadian star for many years. And it's been interesting for me to follow your career over the years. Started in Oak Bluff, Manitoba, where you're from. And I'm trying to remember your initial coach.
Gary Pallett.
Gary Pallett. There we go.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the sport way back when?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Gary's a legend. Gary's coached for being from Manitoba. I think he's coached like 4 or 5 national champions, which is kind of crazy considering how small the population and considering the winters. It is not all of Canada's cold, but I'll tell you, Winnipeg's a little chilly. I kind of like had the classic Canadian kid growing up, right? I played ice hockey like at the highest level possible until I was about 16. During the last couple of years, I started running cross country to stay in shape. And from there, Gary noticed me and he said, why don't you ever think about giving triathlon a go? And to be honest, I hadn't because I couldn't really swim. So I showed up to practice, I remember, for the first time, and we did a 400-meter time trial, and I went 7:53 for 400 meters. And it was probably the hardest 400 I've ever done too. So definitely not a natural swimmer, but he obviously saw something in me that he thought had potential. And that was kind of the start of triathlon. Transferred schools into the city so I could kind of train before and after school. And for anyone in, obviously talking about Winnipeg, is 7 months of the year is indoors. So I'd go at 6 a.m. swim before school, go to high school all day, and then go to the indoor track and either run or set up the trainer. So I've still got a bit of a trauma response to riding the trainer now because I've rode it 5-6 days a week for 5-6 years. So not my favorite thing.
Yeah. And what finally turned you around from sort of hockey to triathlon? Was it because it's obviously hockey a much bigger deal in Canada than tri and all that stuff. What was it about sort of endurance sports that attracted you?
I think the number one thing was I'm extremely highly competitive. And at the time I was playing hockey at the highest level. And at that point a draft happens. And I kind of said to myself, if I didn't get drafted to the top league at that time, that I would consider giving triathlon a more proper go. I dabbled my toes in it. And the second thing was I found, obviously, hockey's a skill sport and a size sport. I'm 5'8", I'm 135 pounds. So not necessarily, there's a few, but there's not many NHL players built like that. And the second is that I found with triathlon, the harder I worked, the luckier I got, in the sense of I put X in, I got X out. It's not as simple these days as you get closer and closer to your own human potential, that's not always the case. But early days is like the harder I worked, the better I got. And I think for someone young, that's pretty easy to get behind. And I still think now, like, I love triathlon, but the thing that I love about it is like pushing myself and finding out how far I can take it. And so obviously I love swimming, biking, and running, and I love getting to do those things. And I think I've fallen in love with them over the years more and more. But I think at first it was more just like, see how far I can take this thing, you know?
One of the things, you talk about being extremely competitive. I don't even know if you remember this back when the year nationals were in Toronto, and my son, Ian, was racing as an underage junior. And, you ended up in a breakaway. There were three of you in a breakaway with Ian. And Ian, to this day, will talk about how you sort of, said to him, hey, calm down. I'll take things for a little bit.
Yeah.
And, you were sort of guiding him along. And I've always found that fascinating how, you're obviously insanely competitive, love to win and everything, but also quite happy to help people along.
Yeah, of course I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. I often joke, like, I'm 31 now, but my whole 20s of triathlon has just gone by like in a snap, and that wasn't even 20 at that point. But yeah, those are fond memories. Honestly, some of the best memories in triathlon still are like, obviously I'm, like you said, I'm competitive and I want to win, but for me, it's like having people around that I can even have an impact on. It sounds kind of corny, but there's like a few moments like racing with your son or different things like that still stick out to me to this day. Like, it's kind of off topic, but one of like the fun, like the most fun races I ever did was like some low level race in Italy. And it was a Italian Grand Prix, and I was racing with teammates who I had just met, and I ended up getting in a break similar with your son. And we got enough time on the group that he hung on, and basically in that single race, he had never been in the top 10. He finished second, and then he guaranteed funding for a year or two. And for me, it was like, that felt as good as winning. That felt better than me winning that race personally.
Yeah.
And obviously it's got to be when you have skin in the game. It's similar to like the same way with hockey, like you have teammates, and triathlon's an individual sport, but the amount of people I've trained with over the years that, I get down in the dumps if they race bad, because I feel like, I just wanting them to race so good for nothing other than themselves, but you end up just getting so invested in other people as well. So yeah, it's an individual sport, but a lot of it is like who you've trained with, who you've come encounter with, and then like carrying that. Yeah. So that's a big part of why I love having tons of training partners or friends around over the years, because it kind of reminds me of the old hockey days.
And so I assume you started hockey like, what, were you 4 years old, 5 years old?
Yeah, I was probably skating at 3, 4, yeah.
Yeah. And so...
Yeah, we got 3 Canadians on the podcast here.
Yeah.
Who all probably grew up exactly the same way.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Was that your, like, right away, were you just like, I'm in love with hockey, I'm in love with sports? Or did you have, were your parents athletic? Did you have some, North Star in athletics? Or how did you find your way into like loving sports?
I think my parents were athletic, but I wouldn't say they were like, genetic freaks or top percentage. Like, my dad ran cross country in high school, and my mom, did similar, where she played a few different sports, but nothing like post high school. But I think one of the things, I played a lot of sports. So like I curled, for those, that's a real Canadian thing too. Yeah. I wrote it yesterday, actually. I curled, I played lacrosse, I played soccer, baseball. I played, and then pretty much every school sport. But one of the rules was, if I signed up for something, I had to like follow through with it. So it couldn't be like, oh, I signed up for baseball for the year and I went to a few practices and I hated it. It was like, I could decide at the end of the year, but one of their things was you had to see it through. And actually, like, one of the first triathlons I did was to qualify for Manitoba Games back in the day. And I remember a couple days before, I wanted to not race because I got invited to like go to my friend's cabin, and I was like, I want to go do that instead. And my parents were like, you signed up for this triathlon and you have to go do this thing. And like after the fact as a kid, I was so happy I did it. But sometimes when it happens now too. It's easier to say yes to the quick fun thing than sometimes the thing down the road. And as a kid, that's even harder to understand. But I think like that was the biggest thing on why I'm here now is like you set a goal or you sign up for something, like you can't quit. Like even if it's going poorly, like you see it through. And at the end of the journey or the end of the year, like you can pull the plug, but you can't give up on it that easy. And I mean, you guys know triathlon, like that's triathlon in a sense, like whether you're doing a sprint or an Ironman, like you're out there for an hour, 10 hours or 12 hours, like you sign up and you see that thing through no matter what. And stuff will come at you that's not enjoyable. And that's kind of what I learned early days from hockey and other sports. And again, like maybe not the most skill crossover between hockey and triathlon, but a lot of the mindset stuff I think was brought from hockey to triathlon.
Yeah. And do you think that, like everybody knows what the crazy insert sport here parents, the crazy hockey parents, the crazy soccer parents, the crazy triathlon parents, whatever. Yeah. Do you think that having, 15 years, 16 years of other sports helped you develop as a triathlete rather than like being in swimming or running from a very young age and then just being burnt out by the time you hit the junior level?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a happy medium, and I'm glad that I found triathlon when I did. I don't think starting early, like maybe I'm a better athlete earlier if I started a couple of years earlier, but I might be out of the sport already. I know I'm very lucky. I was talking yesterday with a friend here that I've had a very long career. And I'm like super blessed to have that career. But part of that too, I think, is like getting into the sport a bit later than some people who start at 7, 8, 9. And my mentality now, like day to day, is I think what keeps me in it. But for sure, there's some crossover. And my parents weren't like the crazy hockey parents, but there's definitely 100% crazy hockey parents. Their thing was always like, got in the car and it was like, did you try your best? The old corny, like, and I was like, yeah, I try my best. And I definitely wasn't the most skilled player when I played hockey. Like I wasn't bad, but I wasn't the most skilled. But my thing was like, I had to like work harder than everyone because I was pretty much the smallest guy. Well, not pretty much, I was the smallest guy on the team for sure. Most people at 15 were already like 6 foot. And I was probably then I was like 5'3", like 100 pounds soaking wet. So I think that kind of added a chip on my shoulder. And I kind of carried that chip through to triathlon. And this sport, like I said, is so hard that you need some type of advantage or talent or whatever you want to call it. And I think one of my advantages is that I kind of had that chip on the shoulder from playing hockey, self-inflicted a little bit, but I carried it through, which is, I think, what has drove me to have a pretty long and decent career. From seeing at 15, I didn't think I'd be racing triathlon at 31 still and calling it a job. So I'm pretty damn lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that, just coming through the Triathlon Canada program that, you're from, obviously, I'm guessing from a junior, you would have got involved in that program. And, as you say, how it's, turned into a 16 plus year career of racing, because I'm not sure, obviously there are other countries that have similar type programs, but certainly would be very different to the way people are coming up through the US programs in a lot of ways. Yeah.
And I think Triathlon Canada, all the federations, they change so much through every Olympic cycle, right? People leave to find new jobs or are forced out. And so I feel like I've been with Triathlon Canada for 15 years, but I've seen so many different iterations of the program. I think a lot of what I think back to is like, I wouldn't be in the sport without my first coach, Gary Pallett, and I wouldn't be here without every coach along the way, whether they were good or bad experiences. I think sometimes people forget, like you were with a coach for a couple of years and then you change coach and then you have good results right away. And yes, it's because of the new coach, but it's not without the old coach. And sometimes people forget that. And so, I've had good experiences, bad experiences, somewhere in between, but like, at 31, I'm pretty lucky. Like I'm actually in better swim, bike, and run shapes at this age than I've ever been. But that's not without my first coach, and it's not without my current coach, Mark. So it's definitely, I've definitely seen a lot of iterations of Triathlon Canada. I've been lucky to be supported by them, most of my career. And I think the partnership has been good. And we have a new team now leading into what the campaign for LA for them. And it's exciting to see the things and changes they've done. Again, I feel like I've raced my first pro race at like 18. So I'm, year 13 coming up on racing as a professional. And the sport has changed within Triathlon Canada, but with outside of too. Just like the talent level, the depth, everything that goes into it is just crazy. Like a funny, off-sided story is like when I first started, you would go on a long ride 3 or 4 hours and you'd bring 2 water bottles and 1 gel, and you'd take the gel if you bonked. And now you go out the door and you have, like 100 grams of carbs an hour for a 3-hour ride. So it's just funny how much the sport has changed. And even talking to like some of the younger guys I train with, the idea for them to go out with 1 gel for a 3-hour ride is just like crazy.
Inconceivable.
Like they're just like, that doesn't make any sense. So, nutrition is one part of it, but just being in a sport this long is seeing how much it's changed. I mean, you guys have seen it change as well. So it's a different sport than when I got into it for sure.
And that was obviously an interesting time frame because, you were sort of coming up. I feel like Jamie Turner was the national team coach. Like you were a full-on Wollongong wizard or whatever, right? Like you were spending, so you're, a Canadian triathlete spending a ton of time down in Australia training and traveling all over the world. Was that, can you talk just a little bit about that experience of, as a junior coming up and, being all over the place?
Leaving Gary as a junior coach, not leaving, but we worked together I actually moved to Hong Kong to train with Patrick Kelly at first.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was Paula Finley's coach when she won the string of WTSs. So he had just been nominated as a Hong Kong national coach. And I had the opportunity to go out there. And as a young guy, I didn't have no money. And they were able to pay for my travel and my flights and that to be a training partner for them. And Pat's a great coach. So I ended up training with them for probably 6 months before I ended up breaking my jaw in a World Cup in New Zealand, at which point I had to go home. And so I had jaw surgery, 4 or 5 of these teeth in my front are still fake. And I still have some side effects. But got it sorted.
They look good. I would never know.
Relative, you don't have the close-up view, but definitely could tell that they're a bit off in person. But I went home, and then that's when at that point I got basically told, like, you need to go to Spain and, try Jamie Turner out. And if you don't like it, you can leave after a month. And I remember going there and being some of the hardest training that I've ever done because of the guys I was training with at the time. It was like Aaron Royal and Ryan Bailey and a bunch of other top level athletes, but Aaron and Ryan were 4th and 5th in the world. And I definitely wasn't in the top 100. So every workout was basically, there wasn't much science behind it at that point. It was just like, try to hold on and be around these guys who are great and try to learn from them. And so I found that was almost like a shortcut, finding someone, a mentor that you can kind of just watch how they move. And even if it's not the perfect scientific training plan, I think there's a lot to be gained from just putting yourself on the thick of it. And that kind of like, I'm still a big believer in that today, of like the mix of art and science for triathlon. Like, there's the perfect training plan, but there's also like just getting out there and getting amongst it with athletes who are better than you and learning the tough way, sometimes getting dropped and humbled. And that can also shape the type of athlete you become, mentally as well.
Yeah.
And so let's fast forward a bit to 2016, your first Olympic Games. I believe you were the youngest in the field, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Youngest in the
Seems
field.
like forever ago now.
Yeah. So you finished 15th. Were you just were you just, I mean, like, that's obviously a great result, but were you just happy to be there and be racing in the Olympics? I mean, that's not that long after you got into the sport. Like, was it just sort of surreal to be there? Take us through like the experience of being in your first Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, just from I remember more so getting the call and getting selected, and I put up some good races, so I thought there was a chance. But I think getting that call is still like one of the most proud moments I have in sport. Like, I was with my grandparents in Ireland because I had been training in Europe, and some other family, getting the call. And then being at the Olympics, like you said, like, I was just happy to be there. And obviously I want to race well, just like anything, but everything about that experience was like, man, at that time, I was the youngest, but I thought, I got to soak this in, because you never know with sport. You can break your leg, get hit by a car, anything can happen. And like, you never know when you're going to be back. So I really took that one to, like, this could be my only Olympic experience. And yeah, that sounds crazy as like the youngest guy in the field, but sport's not a script. And so the good moments you have to enjoy them. The one thing about that race though is, I trained pretty hard, and I raced so much to qualify for the games that I think in the process kind of wore myself out, and ended up getting a femoral neck stress reaction. So I got a MRI the day after the race and had to go on crutches for 2 months, and basically couldn't run for 6 months after. So 15th was great, but not like relative to, good for my health, but relative to being healthy, you always go, oh, what if, that's what sport is. But it's funny looking back at the pictures now and seeing some of the guys who I was running with, the likes of like Christian Blumenfeld and guys that now, are around my age, but are still out there crushing it. So yeah, it's funny to reminisce.
Yeah. And then, jumping ahead, obviously the Olympics aren't everything, but to the next games.
Yeah.
And can you take us through that experience? And was there like a mental factor in like, you're ready for 2020? And sure, you had months notice that it was canceled, but like, to go from it's a few months away to, oh, I have a full year to wait. Was that different? And just, I mean, I guess you could also speak to the difference between a regular Olympics and a COVID Olympics, how strange that was.
Yeah, I'll tell you right away, COVID Olympics not as fun as regular Olympics. And so, no.
That's surprising.
Yeah, and I think I feel like Matt Sharp was there with me, and I always felt bad, like that was his Olympics, and same with my buddy Alexi. And it was like, damn, I wish we could have had a regular Olympics so we could go drink some Canadian beers or some sake after the race on, at a small Japanese bar. And we never really got that experience. And I mean, it's still the pinnacle of sport. I think the race is the race. And yeah, you don't have as many spectators, but I think it's everything else around that, which is what makes the Olympics, that you miss on that. But yeah, I mean, the Olympics being delayed mentally, like, yeah, it's tough, but I took the time to train hard and improve. And to be honest, it being a year after, I could have done with 8 or 9 months after. I trained the house down, and I think made the mistake of, without being able to race or allowed to race, like I just ended up not having as much rest looking back and as many down weeks. I still took recovery weeks in that, but for a short course athlete, you race 10 to 15 times in a year. And so that's 10 or 15 usually travels, 10 or 15 taper weeks on top of recovery weeks. And I basically just went the year of doing normal training cycles and recovery. But looking back, it was just like way more training totaled up over a year period than I normally would do. And I was also training, like I come 15th with an injury. And for me, there's a few things. There's like, you want to go to the Olympics. So I had done that. And then you want to win a medal. And so those are like the two things still, like I think most athletes, it's like your first goal is you want to go to the Olympics. And then once you've gone, then a medal is what you're after. You'd rather try to go for a medal than finish 5th. And that's just me personally. Some athletes maybe don't think that way, but that's the way I trained. And unfortunately I tore my Achilles probably somewhere within a couple weeks out from the Olympics, and raced on a torn Achilles, not a rupture, but a torn Achilles, and finished 15th again. But I'll tell you what, that was one of the most painful things I've ever done. If you go back and watch footage, I have like a dead leg. So on one side of my leg, it's just not reacting at all. And again, we thought it was tendinopathy. And one of the, I mean, funny in hindsight was, working with physios and doctors and all that. Everyone was in the loop, but my pain tolerance was so high. And what I was being honest with them, but I'd be like, what's the pain? And it's like, okay, it's like, 3 out of 10. They're like, okay, that's like tendinopathy, et cetera, et cetera. And then realizing after the fact that, a 3 out of 10 for me might be a 9 out of 10 for someone else. And you can't always trust, even though I'm being honest and they're giving me honest feedback on that. Like, you can't always trust an athlete's pain tolerance because we're taught to like just basically ignore all the signals. It's like you go out and it's like you're racing a long race. It's like everything hurts. Like, ignore everything. Like, just go as fast as you can, ignore. And so I think, now I'm a bit more tuned in on, okay, if it's a 2 out of 10 for me, it's probably worse than I think it is,
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to admit to yourself. And, when you're in it, like you just want, like you convince yourself too. Like I, even though I, felt my Achilles, I still convinced myself I was going to win a medal and I thought I was capable of it. And I didn't. I came up short. And, but that's what drove me to have all the results I've had, is that you have to continue to believe in the face of adversity sometimes. And even when the cards are like so clearly stacked against you and it's not possible, you have to create some type of illusion that it is. And that's, what you see with most top level athletes, whether it's short course or long course, they create this, self-confident delusion almost. And you have to have that mixed with a bit of sanity and like a bit of realism, but there's some delusion up in the skull.
It's an interesting way of putting it. I always remember people talking about Tiger Woods, never losing a tournament because of anything he did. It was, I got a bad roll. I hit a perfect shot and it just, whatever. And so it's an interesting way of looking at that and keeping yourself sane as you're doing it. How much did winning the test event in 2019 affect that training so hard going into Tokyo? Was that something in your head? Like, I won this thing. I beat all these guys.
Yeah.
I can be going, and we're terrible at this in Canada. The Globe and Mail has you on the front page saying, Tyler Mislawchuk, one of the favorites. How did that affect a little bit of that prep and that pressure that you were feeling going into Tokyo?
Yes and no. Like, that was obviously like massive for me at the time. But at the same time, it was like I had won this race, but I felt like at the time, I thought in a year's time, which ended up being 2 years' time, I thought, everyone's going to get better. Like, everyone's seen what it takes to win that race and everyone's going to get better. And so I was more on the thought process of, okay, well, if I want to repeat, I can't just come out and have the same performance. I have to push it to a new limit. And I had those conversations with coaches and people around. Like, I could have had the safer approach and trained relatively hard, relatively on the safe side, and probably come out and had a similar performance. But if you look, the same performance probably would have finished me fifth, on the day. And so fifth Olympics, would I take that over 15th? Knowing that every day of the week, but I didn't know that, And so
yeah,
we trained to reach a new level, and I did reach a new level. Like, some of the numbers and stuff I had about 2 to 3 months out were, all signals go. But that's the part that's hard in sport, is finding out your limits, but also like accepting sometimes that you're going to come close and push them. And there's periods of that. And I've only had 2 injuries in my career, and both of them have been at two out of the 3 Olympics. And I think that's the case of, I know that I have to push the envelope to be able to get a medal. And it has to be calculated, and both were, but they, were just calculated slightly wrong, 1% or 2%, 1%
yeah,
too much. And one of the things that I've realized, and like even in going into Paris was like, I have to take calculated risk, but maybe that 1 or 2% off is going to be enough. And in Paris, I finished ninth. It was a good race. I ran with the leaders for third place until 7K and started throwing up. But even that, like that build up wasn't very smooth because I was in great shape. And then I think it was May, someone crashed me out. I got a really severe concussion and broke my ribs. So, 3 months out from the games, I didn't train properly for probably a month because of my concussion. One of those moments was I realized it was serious when I forgot my address where I live. I was getting new shoes shipped and I couldn't remember the address, and I had to call home and ask for the address. So, definitely all three had their own. That one wasn't so much a self-inflicted or training. That was just outside of your control. But I mean, that's something that, now even we fast forward to like this last year where I didn't have that event where I felt like I had to push beyond the means to get a result. And I had a great year, really consistent across different formats. And so it's like, it's the balancing act of, is that enough for me to be happy, or do I have to push the envelope to get something more? And that's, I think, what every athlete toys with year in and year out.
I definitely want to chat a lot, or more about last year, but just one. I'm sure you're sick of chatting about the Olympics, but in terms of Paris, is there at least the satisfaction that you truly left it all on the line? Like, we, back when I was the editor of Triathlon Magazine Canada, we had the big debate about whether or not we post the photo of you coming across the finish line, basically redecorating the Olympic carpet there. And I was actually doing an interview with Metro Morning, the Toronto CBC morning show. They wanted to do a story talking about the water at the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And the only time they could call me was during the run of the men's race. Oh, really? So I'm up in the stands, and partway through, I just said, I'm really sorry. I can't help myself. Tyler Mislawchuk is in fourth place. He just went by. He's like looking like he has an opportunity to go after a medal here. And they were like, oh, tell us more. We don't care about the water anymore. But like, was there at least the satisfaction that you literally put it all on the line?
Yeah. I mean, I have no regret with how I raced that. And, part of my stomach was definitely, I have a tendency when I swim to take in some of the water, no matter where I am. And if you do small calculation, if you take even like half a milliliter of water in on every time you breathe, not on purpose, but just by like it slipping in your mouth over a 1,500 meter swim, that's a lot of water. So we'll never know, like what made me throw up for sure. But one of the things was like finishing, and I started kind of throwing up in my mouth with 3K to go. That's kind of when I got dropped from Pierre and Leo. And I remember getting dropped and kind of feeling sorry for myself, running alone in fifth and going, and then Christian Blumenfeld ran up on me and I just like thrown up on my mouth, and he went by me and he was breathing like a truck. Just could hear him from a mile away. And I wasn't breathing like that. I was going through obviously my own issues of throwing up, but he came by me and I heard him and I was like, man, he's hurting way more than me. Like, I can't let this guy beat me, like I'm hurting and throwing up and all this, but the stuff you do to convince yourself. I remember him going by me and me tacking on and just listening to his breathing and going like, this guy's hurting way more than you. You can't let this guy beat you, the mind games we play. And I ended up beating Christian on the day. I think he finished 11th and I finished 9th, but he doesn't know that, like, you use other people's motivation or little tricks to yourself. But yeah, in hindsight, I have no regret. I mean, I ran as hard as I could and I came up short and, I trained my butt off. I had the setback of concussion and ribs, but out of my control. And yeah, I look back on that day pretty proud. And, when I finished that Paris, it's still a bit blurry now, but I didn't know if that would be my last Olympics or not. And so I was just grateful to, have had it lined up on the line with no injuries, give it 100%, and come up short. Short is ninth in the world, but like I said, is that you swing for the fences, and sometimes it's not in the books for me to get on the podium that day, and there's nothing more I could have done in anything in the the year, 2 years leading up. Obviously, you can always look back and change, but in the time, there's nothing more I could have done.
Yeah, and you were really emotional after that finish. I had to send. I was finishing up my recap, and one of the other guys from the magazine went down and did the quick post-race interview, and so I didn't catch up with you for a few minutes, and walked over to say, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I had to send someone else to chat." And before I could get much out, you just came over and gave me this big monster hug. It was, and I could just tell that it really meant a lot to you that day, everything that you'd gone through.
Yeah, I mean, the Olympics, right, is like a lot of people's dream, and obviously going to 3, like, I'm super grateful, but I think in that moment it was like I've been through the ringer for 3 Olympic cycles, and like I said, seeing people who have been there along the journey, like yourself, people who have followed my career, whether it's family, friends, sponsors, and like so many of those people were there, and I felt like I could actually say I was proud of what I had accomplished, even though it was short of what I wanted to. It was like not much regret versus the previous 2 Olympics. I had like a lot of regret in decisions I made leading up, obviously in hindsight, but I think there was also a bit of emotion knowing like, this could be my last games. I didn't know, to be honest. I didn't know if I was going to retire at the end of the year or not, like completely from triathlon. And so there was a bit of that going into it of like, what do I want to do here with my life? All happening at once. When you're physically exhausted, you've thrown up 10 times, like it takes a little bit less to get the emotions going than what normally would.
Yeah. And then, so obviously you didn't retire, and then you dipped your dipped your toe into middle distance racing last year. So you won your first 70.3 in Chile, and then you finished 3rd in Malaysia after a crash. How's your experience in jumping up in distance, and was that the plan for a while to make that jump, or was it kind of like spur of the moment sort of, or what went into that decision?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was ever the plan. I think my plan was to get through that Olympics, and then, like I said, do some real hard thinking on myself and what I wanted to do. And like I said, I thought about like, is it time? And we go back to like the early, when I'm talking about like trying to get the most out of yourself. And I'm on the older side of short course and the younger side of long course, but I'm still better now than I was 3-4 years ago. And so that's kind of what led me to going like, let's do another year and let's just try a bunch of stuff and have fun. And it kind of sounds corny, but I was like, let's do a bit of middle distance. Let's do a little bit of short course. Let's do some super tri, and let's just mix it up, have fun. And, by have fun, I mean like do different stuff that is challenging in a different way for me. And change the training a bit. Like I've been training for the same event. And I think in the process, like training for these half Ironmans, I got better at short course and learned a little bit about myself. It's kind of ironic. Like I finished 2nd at a super tri this year. And the week before I was like, or 5 days before, I was on my TT bike for 4.5 hours. So it's just funny looking at it, but yeah, I did 3, and I'd say 1 went really well, which was my first one in Pukan. I won and ran 1:10 off the bike which is a brutal course. It's almost 400 meters of elevation and a half marathon. So I think it's the fastest time ever run on that course. And there's been some legends run that course, Gomez, Sam Long, Lionel, a lot of big hitters. So that was really fun. And kind of caught the bug, and I actually got a wild card slot to T100 Singapore. But if anyone knows, the travel from the US to Singapore is long. And I caught a little bug on the way over, and I did the classic where you're trying to convince yourself you're all right for the 3 or 4 days before, and not really admitting to yourself, like, no, I'm off. And I just, like, nothing in the race was, I didn't swim good, I didn't bike good, I didn't run good. And I finished the race just out of respect of getting a wild card and being invited. But it was like I could barely even go in zone 2 watts or running. So it was a really disappointing day and kind of deflated me a bit because the numbers and everything before were promising. And obviously it's such a new format that it was kind of almost discouraging. And then, race short course in the middle of the year and then finish with Malaysia, which was one of the courses I wanted to do just because it was hot. It was close to Wollongong where the grand final was for short course. And it was a blast. I spent 2 weeks there, had a lot of fun, but maybe 2 days before I started feeling off. And then the morning of the race, I woke up and I was lucky enough to, my mom's newly retired. And so this was the first trip she's come on with me. And I woke up and I had such a sore throat, I couldn't swallow, and a really bad fever. Like I'd been up all night. And I remember sitting there in my bed and went over, chatted to my mom in the room next door and was like, I don't know if I'm going to race this thing. Like I can't really even swallow it. And she's like, well, it's totally up to you. Like this is end of the year. It's like, it's for fun, right? At the end of the day, like it's career, but it's for fun and take your health first. So I ended up going to race. And after like 400 meters in the swim, I did the same thing as like Sam did at Worlds, where I kind of swam off and let people close the gap for the feet. Cause I was like, pretty sure I was going to pull off. So I swam tempo for the rest of the swim thinking, okay, just like get out and, call it a day. And I ended up getting out and was like, okay, just do the bike. You come all the way to Malaysia. And so I biked completely alone for 60K before a wild dog ran into me on my spoke and flipped me over my bike. And the same thing, I'm lying on the ground and I'm going, what am I doing here? It's November. I'm laying on the side of the road in Malaysia. I'm like, got a fever. And then I was like, what else do I got to lose? Like I've already done this. So I got back on my bike. I lost probably a few minutes there and then ran my way into third. But probably one of the most, with half Ironmans, like if you're having a bad day, it's like 4 hours, so it's a bit different than having a bad day in a sprint or Olympic where you're over with. There was I'd say it was one of the most character building races I've ever had, like you finish third and you're like, oh, it's pretty good. But like looking back, it was like, man, I went to war in that race with myself, with the dog, my throat. So an absolutely brutal experience. But like I'm like, look back now and like, I want to be proud of like, not the result, but like fighting through. Like it's so easy to give up in racing when you're just like feeling like crap and you race so much that you're just like, oh, the next one. And so I really didn't want to be like, oh, there's always the next one. I just really wanted to finish it out. So yeah, two totally different experiences, winning one, having it, go as smooth as can be, and then just finishing third, but going through the absolute ringer. So yeah.
When I guess how much of it too is that difference in short course when something goes wrong, the day's pretty much over, right? Like it's whereas in long course, something can go wrong and you still got an hour or two to make up time.
Yeah. That's what I was telling myself. And I was like, worst case scenario, I get off the bike and I run and I don't catch anyone and I gave it my best shot, but best case, it was stinking hot there. Everyone blows up and somehow I still can win this race. And so there's always the what if of long course. And that day was so hot. I think it was 36 degrees Celsius. Yeah. I went through 10K at 3:17 per K pace. So sub 1:10 pace. And then I ran the last 11K in 3:45 pace, and it had nothing to do with my legs, but we were the first ones out on the course and they didn't have ice set up yet. So by the time we were coming in the second loop, there was only one time to get ice in the 21K. And I walked every aid station on the second half because I was also running a fever. And so I was like, I do not want to pass out on this pavement in Malaysia and, end up in a hospital. So I like pushed it and then was like, okay, I'm feeling like this is on the edge. And I walked it's the first time in a race that like I've walked, like I haven't in short course, like if you blow up, you're running 4 minutes a K and you're losing time. It's like if you blow up, like I was walking every aid station just to cool myself down. Something just a totally different experience. And like, again, a totally different challenge because when you're dropped, like you said in short course, Kevin, it's kind of over versus it's like, I'm like dropped. I'm fighting my way back, but like, I'm not out of the race. And so there is like that fun, the part of me that liked it the most was like, I could be going through it and having a bad day, but I could use my mental side to kind of get through it. Versus I feel with short course, it's a little bit less like that where you get dropped. And even if you're mentally strong, you're probably not coming back. It's just like your body, You're just not coming back versus in that race, like there was clear moments throughout the bike and the run and the swim that was like, I made decisions where it's like, keep going. And then you get rewarded for it later. But yeah, kind of a wild race.
Yes, Malaysia, Langkawi, famous. I used to cover Ironman Malaysia all the time. Went back when it was in February, and the record temperature for an Ironman, I believe, was set there 44 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
That year I remember that one of the race directors coming in and saying, it's a hot day when the locals are saying it's too hot to volunteer. And so,
and I was racing Josh Hamburger, if you know him. He's been around for so many years, and he said it's hotter than Kona. He's like, it's the only race that he's ever raced and he's done the full Ironman and the half, but he's like, it's the only race that it took him, like he said, like a month to properly recover after because of just how much you have to go to the well and the heat there. And that's why they didn't have the ice out, because the age groupers were racing the full Ironman, and so they had kind of planned accordingly, because obviously you can't leave ice out all day and you only have so much. So a little bit of a mistimed thing, but like it's not everyone has to deal with it. That's kind of the fun part of like the adversity of middle distance is, every race is going to be slightly different and the challenges are going to be for everyone. And, that's what I really liked about the longer distance, to be honest.
So speaking of that, what does this year look like, and the next few years leading? Is the next few years leading to LA? Are you going for a fourth Olympics?
Yeah, I've been. That's a thing I've probably played in my head about 1 billion times in the last 2 months. I've been training alone in Flagstaff, so I've got a lot of time to do a lot of thinking, and. I bounce back and forth. I really, really like the middle distance and the long distance. I think the big pull for me with LA is it being in LA, close to Canada, close to where I train in Flagstaff, Arizona. And I mean, it loops back to I'm now running and riding and swimming better than I have after a year of training for middle/short course. And so my thought is, why would I change my training if I got better doing that? So to be honest, I haven't figured out an exact race calendar. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to start the year. I've got a bunch of different options. You could go to Abu Dhabi, short course way. You could go to Dallas. You could go to Oceanside. One of the things that I was thinking about last year, and I was kind of almost tempted to try, was Ironman Cozumel at the end of the year. But I don't think you can balance Ironman and do short course. I think for me, it's one or the other. And to be honest, physiology, I think my best events are short course and then going all the way to Ironman based on testing and zones. Olympic, from Olympic to 70.3, it's a lot of threshold reliance. And obviously I have somewhat of a good threshold if I'm doing what I'm doing, but relative, my strength is actually going out and doing longer durations at a slightly below threshold effort, which would feed into Ironman. Obviously with Ironman, there's a different beast in terms of you got to nail nutrition. You got all these other things that can go wrong in 8 hours. But to be honest, Ironman is more enticing to me than half. But I also don't necessarily want to stop short course because I'm having so much fun and it's a possible home Olympics. So sorry, I can't give you a proper answer because I don't have the full answer myself right now. And I'm still trying to work through it with my coach, Mark. And all I know is like this last year, I had some of the most fun I had in the sport. And I think that was because I was doing different formats and obviously trying to have some great results, but it was just like a mix and match and a style that I haven't done before. Like we talk about middle distance. I also had so much fun at Super Tri, which are like, they're always a blast event to be part of. And they're like just different. And so that's kind of where I land, is that I've still got to figure it out, but I think I'm in a good position that I can pivot either way, depending on how the year plays out or starts. And I imagine by the end of this year, I'll have a more clear direction because the Olympic qualifying starts in May. And so by the end of the year, whether I'm taking that path to LA or I'm taking a different path, like I'll have a better idea.
Yeah. Be pretty cool to be a 4-time Olympian.
Yeah. I really, when I've been having these conversations with myself, I was thinking, what's the goal of, if you're trying to go to the 4th Olympics, what's the goal? And like going to 4th Olympics, like you said, is pretty cool, but I'm not wired in that sense. And so it's like, if I'm committing to go to Olympics, I'm going to change some things and try some new things. Like that could be on the risky side because I don't want to just show up and finish 15th place. I'd rather have a result like Paris. And if I blow up and come 5th or 6th or 12th, I'd rather live with that. So yeah, definitely some things to think about. But when I asked ChatGPT how many people had been to 4 Olympics in triathlon, and there was a small list of like, I think it was around 7 athletes. And then I asked it how many athletes have finished in the top 15 at 4 Olympics. And the list was 2 people. It was Flora Duffy and Nicole Spirig. So no man has ever done that. And it's kind of, stats are stats. You can always make them whatever you want them to be. But that's a cool side note. Not that it's like, oh, I'm going to Olympics to finish 15th. That's not how my brain works. I'm not like a show up and just, race. Following my career, you could see that through the trials and tribulations of good and bad results, is that I'm not just there to show up. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like just coming back to the longer distance stuff a little bit, for me sitting on the outside, when I look at you racing and everything, I've always felt like it's a bit of cycling power that separated you from, that next level. And obviously that all came to fruition. You were right where you needed to be in Paris, but I feel like a lot of times it's that kind of separates you. And it seems like, when you're sitting down and, spending 4 hours on a time trial bike and everything, that's got to help with that. Am I on the right track, or do you feel like that is maybe something that's helping?
Yeah, I think it's a multitude of things. One, that I'm 60 to 62 kilograms, and most of the guys I race against are 70, even in short course, and sometimes in long course, sometimes going up to 80. And so my power to weight has always been quite good. Like it's probably, I can push 6 watts a kilo for 20 minutes. It's quite good and probably higher than a lot of guys who are bigger just because of weight. But that's one of the obstacles I have to overcome is on flat courses. Weight doesn't matter so much. It's CDA to watts. And so for me, navigating that is that I have to be so much stronger watts per kilo than most athletes, because for me, if I push 360 watts for 20 minutes and, someone who is 10 kilos heavier pushes 380, we might go the same speed, but relatively like my watts per kilo are much higher. So that's something I have to combat with. The second thing is that I'm naturally, again, I work on both sides of the spectrum. I'm quite fast twitch athlete, and I'm very good at long, steady, stuff slightly below threshold. And so for me in short course, sometimes when I come out, I'm able to swim quite well or get in a lead group or do this, but my lactate is extremely high, and it might be higher relative than my other competitors. And then on the bike, I in turn suffer. And so I think, like you saying, being on the bike for 4 hours, some of the training I did early season was a lot of low intensity, high volume stuff, some like long tempos. And I think like, yeah, that made me stronger on the bike, but it also made me more resilient coming out of the water. So I could actually show more how I can normally ride, relative to, so yes, it helped, but not necessarily like in a, A equals A way. It's not as simple as that. And so I think you're on the right path 100%. I think the longer stuff, and now that's what I'm doing, like in the first 3 weeks of January, I've done 6 5-hour rides, in my training block. So it's definitely worked last year. And so I'm doubling down, and I think it's only going to help me whether I do choose to go 70.3 Ironman or short course or super tri. But yeah, for me, like, again, that size disadvantage is like the hardest thing on the bike when you're looking at pure power. And so it's like something I've always had to work on, but I've always felt like in racing, the first part of the bike and first half is when I struggle, is because my lactate is so high coming out of the water. So there's also things you can do to address it, let's say swimming wise, that we've looked at. But yeah, I think as a whole, like I leave 2025, like a better cyclist within triathlon, if that makes sense. Yeah.
You just can't win as a hockey player. You're going into the corner and you've got some 6'6" defenseman making you part of the boards, and you jump into tries and Christian is pushing 400 watts for an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Like that is like the crazy part. But what's also cool is like all the different body types in triathlon, and it's like figuring out how to make it work with your advantages and disadvantages. And like I said, one of my advantages is like chip on the shoulder. Well, one of my advantages is also that I have great run economy, I can come back from an injury, and like, as long as I'm healthy, I have good run economy, which plays out well. Like you've seen over the 70.3, like running 110 over a hilly course. Like a lot of that is like, yeah, it's training, but a lot of that comes down to economy. And so like, there's like, okay, I have a huge advantage there, but I've got this disadvantage, and I've got to figure out how to, minimize that. And for me, like one of the things I know is like, I can be one of the best runners in the world. And so it's figuring out how to get off a bike, whether it's short or long distance, and being able to actually express my run fitness. Very little am I like in a race and go, oh, I ran to my best run fitness that I could, and like that's the result. It's usually like, oh, I threw up, or oh, I got, I overbiked, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of career wise, is there, I guess, I don't know the politically correct way to ask this question. Is it easier to make a living as a pro triathlete doing long course or short course stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's more sponsor and individual money in long course for sure. And I think that's a pull for a lot of people. There's a little bit of security in short course in terms of you have national funding and federation funding if you're on the national team. So whether that's like getting some races funded to go to, getting a stipend per month from the government. And so I think the upside of long distance is way more, but there is some type of a little bit of security of like, oh, I'm going to have some races paid for, versus let's say I go to long distance, my upside with sponsors, triathlon specific sponsors, is a lot more, but I have to take that jump or that risk that I'm paying for all the races, and I don't maybe not necessarily have a stipend right away or a big sponsor. And so yes and no, but I think with both sides of it, it's so top heavy. And I think you see it as like the best athletes in the long distance world, I think, are making a killing. But after top 10, people are just trying to stay in the sport and do what they love, and like they're making a living, but they're definitely not putting away a ton of money. And I mean, that's how all sports are. It's top heavy, and it's tough when you're coming up too. Like as a long course athlete now, I think about like young long course athletes who have to, invest all this money, whether it's, the top bike technology, getting into a wind tunnel,
Right.
the accessibility to be the top long distance is actually probably more money than getting into the top of short course, because short course, it's like you get yourself a road bike that's decent. It's not like every inch you move around on the bike is like the biggest deal breaker.
Right.
Equipment is a lot more of a piece to the puzzle in long distance. And so I think it's like one of the cool parts. It's like fun to be like nerd out and see that, but it's also makes it harder and less accessible to athletes coming into the long distance world, trying to make it as a pro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you were talking about how, your training for the middle distance has helped your short course racing. What does a regular week of training look like for you?
Yeah, it changes throughout the year. So like right now I'm in a base period, so a little bit more hours. Like I'm living at 2,100 meters for those who don't know. So you don't recover quite as well up here. You have to be a bit more careful with intensity and volume. But I've done a 4-week block, and today's actually my first recovery day, where I think it was 25, 28, 30, and 32 hours as a 4-week block post, like basically from right after Christmas till now. So that's for me being at altitude, those are some decent numbers. And within that, right now I'm working on both ends. Like I said, I'm working on the very top end with my top end speed, which eventually trickles down and helps your efficiency across all sports. And I'm working on like low end base, which is building my aerobic volume. And so either way, like I can transition into whatever style of racing that I want to. I think it's like one of the number one overlooked things, especially this time of the year with triathletes, is not doing speed. And that doesn't mean going to the track and running full gas reps. It means like doing strides, doing hill reps, doing 25s in the pool, doing, under 12 seconds on the bike. Like those are all things that sound crazy for a long distance athlete or even an age group or doing a Olympic distance. But the reality is like, when have you ever, I'll make it with a track analogy, but like, when have you ever seen a marathoner come down and run a good 1500 versus when have you seen a 1500er transition up to the marathon and run a good marathon? Yeah. And so you need a base level of speed that you can become efficient at, said watts. Like if your max sprint on the bike is 400 watts, it's almost impossible that you're going to hold 300 watts for a half Ironman. Yeah. Especially this time of the year when it's less specific. It's, I think, one of the number one overlooked things that I found in the last couple of years have really helped me.
Yeah. Is there a key workout that you would have, like a test workout that you've done over the years, or any sort of key workouts that are kind of a mainstay for you?
Yeah. Running wise, my favorite workout is 20 by 400 threshold. And so it's just 20 to 30 seconds rest, like just over a minute reps. And one of the things with that is that I keep the effort threshold and I can kind of tell how I'm moving based on that. So it's not like I'm increasing the effort, et cetera. And I can kind of tell what kind of shape I'm in. Also love that session because you're able to run faster while still staying in, under threshold. So you're still working the aerobic system, but you're able to get a lot more race specific stuff. So typically if I'm able to race, run what I want to in 10K for at least or faster for these 400 reps and stay under threshold, I know I'm in a good spot. Like this last summer, before I actually went to Chicago Super League and came second, and then the grand final, I did that session twice. And both times up here, I was running anywhere from 68s to 69s for 400s. And there's about 28% less oxygen up here. So I know I'm in a pretty good place relative to, if I can do it up at 7,000 feet, I can do it at sea level for sure. So I think that's one of my favorites. And honestly, the same with the bike and the swim is doing like shorter reps with really short rest. And I find that I'm just able to, get closer to race power while I'm under fatigued. I think as triathletes, whether you're a pro or an age grouper, it's easy to get bogged down and tired in a training block. And sometimes just breaking it up and with short reps can really mentally get you through it. And there's a time and a place, obviously, for longer, steady reps, but those are kind of my favorite, pre-race, testing, seeing where I'm at workouts.
Cool.
Well, that's downright depressing. Back when I was a 5,000 and meter runner and steeplechaser, our go-to workout was 16 times 400 with a 100-meter jog recovery.
Yeah.
And of course, Tyler comes in and goes, yeah, you wimpy guys just doing 16. We do 20 now. So not only do I feel inadequate, but I feel really old too.
Well, in 5 years from now, they're going to be doing 35 or something like that. And I'm going to be listening. Going,
yeah, somebody's going to come in 20 years and do a podcast with you, Tyler, and you're they'll be doing 40, and you'll say, back in the good old days. When yeah, there you go. Well, hey, Tyler, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time here today. And I am bummed that I don't know exactly where you're going to be racing this year, but we'll keep our eyes open.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you. When I know, I'll tell you guys. I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, no, it's it's a nice problem to have when you've got a couple of different options, and we'll look forward to another great year of racing for you. And Canadians will certainly be crossing our fingers that we'll see you in LA in 2028, but we got some time to figure that one out.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys for having me on and supporting. And maybe we'll chat in the future once I figure out some more details and a year or two down the road. So look forward to it.
Well, if you'll come back, we will for sure want to do that. So, Hey, thanks so much. He's Tyler Mislawchuk. I'm Kevin Mackinnon, and we also have Ben Snyder McGrath with us here. This has been the Slowtwitch Podcast. Thanks for joining us this week.
We are a team of like-minded individuals. We have come together to bring athletes what they have wanted for years. From fast-acting carbs to everyday electrolytes. Products that are built on science and backed by common sense. Get after life by fueling your good life. FuelYourGoodLife.com.